And good morning to all of you. I am Reverend Israel. I'm the minister of this congregation, and I use he, him for pronouns.
I'm Heather Guerin Rice. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a member of this congregation, and I'm today's worship associate.
Good morning. My name is Lenore Bajare-Dukes. I serve the congregation as the Director of Lifespan Faith Development, and my pronouns are she and her. And it's good to be together today.
Yeah, it is. How are you doing this morning? Lenore and Heather.
Good. Lots of coffee, so I'm good.
I'm great. I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm actually I had my coffee, but we have a phrase at home, which is when I haven't had my coffee yet, I say that I'm pre-coffee. Still feeling a little bit that way, but waking up. So maybe some of you at home are feeling that way, and I hope that you're having your coffee right now. So good morning to all of you out there, with maybe some of you still with your bathrobes and your pajamas still on and your slippers, or coffee breakfast at the table, looking out the window at this contemplative rainy day. Welcome to this congregation, to this virtual sacred space that we share together. It really is my pleasure to welcome you all here to this progressive spiritual community where we come together to nourish the spirit, connect in love, and live for justice. All of you are welcome here. No matter where you are from, no matter who you love, no matter how you experience the sacred or meaning in life, you are welcome here to this space with us, all of you, with all of your beliefs, doubts, questions, and curiosities. We welcome you here as we seek, all of us, to journey and grow and live lives filled with love.
And we gather in this community of all ages, of so many identities, because we need each other. We all carry a piece of wisdom and truth. So we come here to share our truths with each other, and in the process to discover the beautiful complexity of the world. We are gathering in community because during this time of pandemic and distancing, gathering is an act of survival and of hope.
We warmly welcome anyone who is new here. We know that entering into a spiritual community as a newcomer can be intimidating, but we're glad you're here. Thank you for taking the brave step of checking us out. We hope that you will feel connected to what goes on here, even through the screen across physical distance and digital space. We hope you will find folks to chat with, and we hope we'll meet you someday. If you'd like to find out more info about what goes on here, we encourage you to sign up for our newsletter by visiting our website.
As always, we want to worship, and we invite you to worship with your hearts, your heads, and also your hands. At this time of not being together in our worship space, we can still be together through something tangible. So if you haven't yet, go ahead and find a piece of paper and maybe some colorful markers or pens, and we'll use them together during the service for our spirit work. And now we're going to try something a little new. I invite you to type into the chat just to settle into this space together. What is something beautiful that you encountered this weekend? What is something beautiful that you've been seeing that is lingering with you? So we'll just see that in the chat together to enter into our space. And now the Capobianco family will invite us all into sacred space by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith.
I want to know if there's anything beautiful that you saw this weekend.
Oh, you know what? There is. It rained where I am, and it was sort of this sheen of rain, and it was actually not something that I saw. It was something that I smelled. So it's the rain coming down, and it's sort of the smell of the warm ground meeting the rain, and it was just like, oh, spring is coming, and that stayed with me. So I'm happy. And I see there are some fields of winter snow, raindrops collecting on the ends of the branches, a wedding dress pick out. There's so many grandchildren, a robin, several robins. So thank you.
I saw crocuses coming up.
Where was that?
On Chestnut Street, one of the houses on Chestnut Street.
And I see Heather has.
Actually, no, it was on Mary Street.
And we've got roses, a small head of deer. Oh my goodness. Sunshine, a flock of geese. So we can keep these coming. And if you have a chalice also, we invite you to bring it with you as the Capobianco family invites us into sacred space and lights our chalice together.
Hi, my name is Michelle.
My name's May.
My name is Co.
My name is Graham.
We're going to light the chalice this morning. Ready?
Ready.
We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is a church of open minds. This is a church of helping hands. This is a church of loving hearts. Together we work for peace and friendship in the world.
Thank you.
So I welcome us all into this sacred space together this morning. A sacred space where maybe like if we are walking out on the street, like I was a couple of days ago when I saw those crocuses coming up, that we may begin to discover the beauty that is in our midst already, where we may begin to discover the beauty and the creativity that happens when we least expect it, revealed in unexpected places and happy accidents. And maybe we will begin to find beauty and connection in painful moments too. Here in this space that we call worship, we learn how to begin or continue to discover to live authentically, creatively, and with meaning. And we practice how to make space for each other to do it as well, together and apart. And today, we also do that through a story.
That's right. And so this morning, we're going to be inviting you into sacred imagination and to sacred wondering. We'll have a playful and profound story. I love this story. It's going to sort of weave together our time together. It's a story by Daniel Manus Pinkwater, and we've adapted it for this service. And it's called The Big Orange Splot. So perhaps some of you may already know and love this story. Notice that we won't be calling children of all ages forward to your screens at one particular moment in this service, because we're hoping that you'll be part of the whole service. So I and we invite you forward right now. And we also invite adults forward right now, because this is for everyone. And in fact, some of our people of all ages have already been working on their spirit work, and they'll also be helping us tell the story today. So this morning, may the colors of your imagination fill this space, joining together in sacred time. Mr. Plumbean lived on a street where all the houses were the same. He liked it that way. So did everybody else on Mr. Plumbean's street. "This is a neat street," they would say. Well, then one day, a seagull flew over Mr. Plumbean's house. She was carrying a can of bright orange paint. No one knows why. And she dropped the paint, no one knows why, right over Mr. Plumbean's house. It made a bright orange splot right over Mr. Plumbean's house. "Ooh, too bad," everyone said. "Mr. Plumbean will have to paint his house again." "I suppose I will," said Mr. Plumbean. But he didn't paint his house right away. He looked at the big orange splot for a long, long time. And then he went about his business. The neighbors got tired of seeing that big orange splot. Someone said, "Mr. Plumbean, we wish you'd get around to painting your house." "Okay," said Mr. Plumbean. And everyone waited for the return to a neat street. Everything in its place and nothing out of line.
So, I wonder if you ever felt like someone dropped a bucket of bright orange paint on your house, or maybe on your own head. I wonder if you ever felt like change was forced upon you, maybe before you weren't ready, where you were in a situation where everything was nice and normal and comfortable. And then suddenly, like that, everything changed. What is our instinct to go and do next when something like that happens? Do we want to go and run up to the roof and wipe away the orange paint and get everything back to perfectly as normal like it was before? Or anyone who's ever spilled paint and waited more than a couple minutes knows that it can be pretty hard actually to wipe some of it up. And maybe things will never get quite back to the way they used to be before that paint was spilled. It's curious to me that Mr. Plumbean in the story didn't immediately rush to clean up the paint, actually. He actually sits there and looks at it for a little while and gives it some time to sit with him, to see what it feels like. Sometimes we can be grateful for interruptions, I think. When something like this happens, we can take some time to sit with it, to sit with the unexpected. Maybe you're feeling like COVID was like a giant bucket of paint thrown on all of our houses when we were least expecting it. And maybe some of us are sitting here thinking about how this could be a change that we could possibly embrace. How we can intentionally engage with the process of change. So I want to offer one more metaphor for us right now. I am from New England, which some of you might know or not, and where lobster is a big industry. I'm from Rhode Island, and I spent a lot of time in Maine, where lobster is a big industry. And I remember reading or hearing somebody talk about lobsters once, and how lobsters are actually like really soft and mushy on the inside, and they live inside of a shell. As many of you know, that's bright red after it's cooked. And the shell of a lobster is hard and thick, and actually, but the shell does not grow. The shell of the lobster does not grow. The lobster on the inside of the shell grows. And when the lobster inside its own shell starts to grow, it actually starts to push up against the inside of the shell, and it gets really, really uncomfortable. And it's actually the pressure, the discomfort of the lobster growing inside of its shell that leads to change. It's discomfort, extreme discomfort actually, that leads to change. And if it weren't for that discomfort, the lobster would never know to leave its shell, to molt, to leave the shell, so that it could become something different, newer, bigger. So, I ask us to sit with that for a moment. Think about how change can be scary and can lead to discomfort. But I ask, what comes next? What will we do? Will we discover that there is the divine in unexpected change?
Divine, 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 and it's all mine, it's mine, it's mine. Divine, 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 it makes my heart shine. Boom, 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 so divine, divine, so divine, divine, so divine, and it's all mine, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine, it's so mine, the tree, divine, 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 it makes my heart shine. Boom, 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 divine, so divine, divine, so divine, divine, so divine, and it's all mine, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine, boom, 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 divine, so divine, 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 it makes my heart shine.
How are you all doing this morning? I ask, how is it with your spirit? What's going on with you inside here in your heart? You come here still tired, wiping the sleepies from your eyes. You come here wiping the tears from your eyes. Or do you come here happy and joyful? Or do you come here not quite knowing what it is that you are wrestling or grappling with today? That you maybe need the help of community to make some sense of? Well, luckily, here in our communal well, in our space of community, we can bring all of those things, all of the joys, the sorrows, and the complex truths that we arrive here with. We can bring them all here and try to make sense of them here. And we can support each other as we do so. After all, isn't that why we come to community? So that we can discover something beautiful from the truths that we all bring, even if it is in the midst of suffering. So I invite you now. This is the time that I invite you to share the thing that is on your heart. If you are carrying something that you must share with us, something deep and meaningful and powerful for you that is a part of your story, not someone else's story that you don't have permission to share, but a part of your story in your heart. If you'd like to share that with us, I invite you to type it into the chat in 15 words or less. And we'll read it aloud for you. If you'd like us to say your name, please type your name from so-and-so before it. And as we read your truth, I will drop for you into our well of community a stone so that you will know that you are held here in this space.
Prayers for the Miller family on Clayton Road who are sickened by last week's tragedy. Diane is meeting her 3-month-old grandson, Nico, today.
From Havana, I'm excited that my parents will soon be moving into an assisted living facility.
Joy for the coming of spring. A stone for my grandmother, Dorothy Elizabeth Berkman Garin Jacobs.
From Joanna, joy that I got to see my sister this weekend and joy over her new job. Think good thoughts, prayers as she, or for her as she works towards getting her level 3 sommelier certification.
Joy for the beauty of Lancaster County's natural lands.
From Michelle, I'm exhausted but so excited to co-facilitate the upper elementary anti-racism course this afternoon.
From Andy, a stone for the 1-year anniversary of my father's death.
From Sandy, delight at attending the Black Business Expo yesterday.
Joy for my sister and friend from afar joining us.
From Holly, joy that my kids will get to participate in the class with Michelle today.
Full moon from Judy, joy that I could make 2 snowmen this month.
For all of the, oh, go ahead. Go ahead, sorry.
From Candy, a stone for Sandy in hopes that her EEG shows no bad news.
Marian Joyce, gratitude for the support Maeve received in the favorite chef competition and remembering my mom's first month anniversary of her passing this weekend.
And for all of the joys, sorrows, complex truths, truths that are still in formation, truths that are beyond words for many of us, truths that only live in the silent places in our hearts. I drop this final beautiful stone into our well for all of you and all of us, and know that we and you are all held here in this community, in these refreshing, beautiful, warm waters. I invite you now to take a moment with life, to take a moment to experience the fullness of life as it presents itself to you on this day, this beautiful day. When we pause in these kinds of moments to meditate or pray or simply be mindful, we often close our eyes and we turn inward. And that can be incredibly powerful for many people. This morning, I invite you to open your eyes and to look around and to see the world as it is before you, to see the people who are here before you. You can even go into gallery view yourselves if you want to see each other, and you won't be on our live stream if you go into gallery view. To look around and to see the people that you are here with, connected by this miracle of technology. We are here to discover how we can become aware in our interactions with each other. To see that while we are all unique and beautiful and bring beautiful things to the table, even if this is your first time coming here, to see that while we are all unique and beautiful and loved, that we are also part of a greater whole. So look at each other and see each other as if we were all dots in a magnificent pointillism painting. You know, one of those paintings with all of the little dots. Because when you look at a pointillism painting close up, you may just see lots of bright dots with individual hues. You may only see the contrast between the individual dots. And our expression of our individual hues does matter. But in moments like this, in prayer, meditation, or awareness, when we see each other, we can pull back for a moment and see the magnificent painting that is created by all of our unique images. I invite you to take that in now for a moment while we listen to Spirit of Life, to be present to life.
Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
You may recall that the neighbors had asked Mr. Plumbean to paint his house. And so he did. He got some blue paint, and that night he got busy. He painted at night because it was cooler. When the paint was gone, the roof was blue. And the orange spot was still there. Then he got some more paint. He got red paint. He got yellow paint. He got purple paint. And in the morning, all the people on the street came out of their houses. Their houses were still all the same. But Mr. Plumbeam's house was like a jungle. It was like an explosion. There was the big orange splot, and there were little orange spots. There were stripes. There were pictures of elephants and lions and steam shovels. Well, the people said, Mr. Plumbeam, that is not what we meant. That is not what we meant. And they went away muttering. Well, that day, Mr. Plumbeam bought some carpenter's tools. And that night he built a tower on top of his roof. And he painted a clock on the tower. Well, the next day, the people said, this has got to be against some kind of an HOA regulation somewhere. They decided they would pretend not to notice. That very night, Mr. Plumbeam got a truck full of green things. He planted palm trees, fir trees, baobabs, thorn bushes, onions, and a frangipani. In the morning, he bought a hammock and an alligator. When the other people came out of their houses, they saw Mr. Plumbeam swinging in a hammock between the two trees. They saw an alligator lying in the grass, and Mr. Plumbeam, well, he was drinking lemonade. Plumbeam has gone too far, they said. This used to be a neat street. Plumbeam, what have you done to your beautiful house? The people shouted. My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all of my dreams, Mr. Plumbeam said.
I wonder, where do you see yourself in this story? Where do we see ourselves, our congregation, in this story? I wonder, how do we learn or move ourselves to speak the truth and express ourselves authentically with each other and with the world? I wonder, how do we uphold the status quo with each other and with our community and with the world? Have you ever felt like you were the only person who was able to see things in a new way? I have news. I bet you aren't. I bet there are others who see it too, who are just too afraid to say so. I wonder, what colors would you paint your house if it were a reflection of your dreams? I wonder what colors we would paint our house if it were a reflection of our dreams. So, if you have brought your spirit play, if you have brought your house to draw on, I invite you to bring it out now. And if you haven't, because you didn't know this was happening, that's okay. I invite you to get a piece of paper and something to draw with, and to draw your own house, or even our house, and to spend some time working on that, maybe during the rest of this service and the songs that will come up. Show us your dreams. And now back to our story.
Well, the people went away from around Mr. Plumbean's house. And they asked the man living next door to Mr. Plumbean to go and have a talk with him. Go and have a talk with him. Tell him that we all liked his house before it changed. Tell him that this is a neat street and we need him to be neat too. Tell him that the house has to be the same as ours so that we can have our neat street back. So the man went to see Mr. Plumbean that evening. They sat under the palm trees, drinking lemonade. They talked all night long. Well, the next day, the man went out to get lumber and rope and nails and paint. And when the people came out of their houses, guess what they saw? Had Plumbean gone back to the way it was before? Did his neighbor help him? Afraid not. There was a giant balloon house on the street right next to Mr. Plumbean's house. "What have you done to your house?" they shouted at the man. "My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all of my dreams," said the man, who had always loved flying. "He's just like Plumbean," the people said. "He's bringing down the property value of the entire neighborhood." So one by one, they went to see Mr. Plumbean late at night. Mrs. Shipsworth sat and rocked in the rocker. They sat under the palm trees and they drank lemonade and they would talk about their dreams. And whenever anyone visited Mr. Plumbean's house, I think we have some visual help here. Whenever anyone visited Mr. Plumbean's house, guess what would happen? The very next day, that person would set about changing her own house to fit all of her dreams. Let's feast our eyes on this formerly neat street for a moment. Yes, all the people would say, "Our street is us, and we are it. Our street is where we like to be, and it looks like all of our dreams." I wonder, what dreams does this whole street show now that each house is living its dreams out loud?
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I've always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please, won't you be my neighbor?
Hi, neighbors. I forgot my sneakers at home. Oh well. And thank you, Lenore, for that story. What happens when we learn to live our dreams out loud with each other? and we take the time to embrace the unexpected, to embrace change and newness and creativity, to take the step, the brave step, to try something new and to express ourselves out loud. Why do we bother with embracing change or entering into the creative process? In fact, anyone who has stared at a blank sheet of paper or a blank canvas trying to create a painting or write an essay or write a sermon on Saturday evening knows the tedium and the knows how torturous it can be to stare at a blank sheet of paper, to stare at a blank canvas, to stare at a blank wall, not knowing what to put on it. To create something new out of nothing is messy and scary and uncertain, and maybe to us does not, feels like the furthest thing from divine creation that we could possibly get. It takes enormous energy, forcing us to live in the space of the unknown. And maybe even we fear the judgment of others for what we might create, to put it out there into the world. We fear that we might mess up or create something strange, unusual. And that is just when we are trying to enter into that kind of a process alone, to create something by ourselves. Never mind when we try to do it with others in community. When we try to create something in community and we all bring different visions, it can be a mess. It could be a beautiful, wonderful, divine mess. You see, the challenge, I think, one of the challenges of beloved community is how we come together to embrace and see and listen to each other's visions, to see the depictions of our own beautiful individual homes, while also maybe recognizing that we are all living in the same house that we call life, or community, or maybe this congregation. So how do we decide what color to paint our own house when we all have different preferences? How many meetings do we need to determine whether we should paint it cerulean, azure, sky blue, or maybe teal? How do we come to such a decision together? Now, of course, this kind of thing I'm talking about is exactly the kind of stereotypical thing that drives many people crazy about being in a congregation. It drives many people crazy about churches. The slow process of change, the slow process of deviating from the status quo, the slow process, how much energy it takes to collaborate with one another, how many committee meetings it takes to discern between violet and aubergine, how much time it takes to come to consensus, to listen to each other, to hear each other. Maybe some of you are familiar with the somewhat cliched joke of how many Unitarian Universalists does it take to change a light bulb? Does anyone know the answer? Well, it's something like, like 275. So it takes, 10 people on the board to appoint the committee on committees that determines that determines the light bulb that we will choose. It takes the Green Sanctuary Committee to determine which kind of energy efficient light bulb will go within the first place. And then it takes the nominating committee to nominate the people to the committee that will install the light bulb. And then it takes the other 270 something members to critique and give their opinions about where the light bulb was placed and all that. You get the idea. But my point being that while we try to come to consensus, sometimes it can feel like fresh, new, creative ideas are rotting in the heat of debate. Now, this is a cynical take on community. There's some truth to it, maybe. But the balance, I think, of community is how we are all able to bring our truths to that space and listen to them. Now, last week, if you were here for my sermon, you heard me talk about the importance of getting beyond the simple politeness of sharing how we truly feel with each other, of sharing our opinions and beliefs and concerns with each other, because that's what it's really about, talking about the things that are important. I still maintain that that is an important thing to do. But the flip side of that, of expressing our own dreams, is being able to listen to another person's dreams. Mr. Plumbeam in the story tries something new, and it upsets people that he's around. And so they come to talk to him to try to change his mind, presumably, and tell him that he needs to paint his house back to fall in line with theirs. But what do they end up doing? They end up sitting under the trees all night, sipping lemonade together and discussing their dreams. And maybe it took all night, but they were able to talk about their dreams together. And Mr. Plumbeam was able to hear the dreams of the neighbors, and the neighbors were able to be inspired by his and hear his. Isn't that pretty cool? And isn't that something that we can do here together? And he inspired a whole neighborhood of people to live their dreams out loud. Now, many of us come here, I think, to a UU congregation, to a Unitarian Universalist congregation, because we're seeking authentic expression. We don't want somebody else telling us how to live our dreams or how or what to believe. We believe that life, belief, the world are far too complex for someone to sum up for us in a nice, neat creed that we paint on the outside of our house, and we all paint the same one on the outside of our house. We come here wanting to express ourselves authentically. We have to remember one thing. Do you feel welcome here? Do you feel like you are able to live yourself, live your dreams out loud authentically here? And if so, is it only because you're maybe not part of the status quo out there in conservative Lancaster land? Maybe you're a part of the unique UU, what you might call your sort of like liberal bubble here. You're a part of the unique status quo that exists in here. But what happens when somebody comes into this bubble that sees things a little bit differently? Are they free to express and live their dreams out loud authentically here? And I'm not just talking about the differences between progressive or conservative worldviews. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about maybe someone who has a different cultural perspective or looks at church and wonders why it needs to be the way it is. Someone who dresses a little bit different when they come in these doors, or talks a little different, or looks a little different. How are they free to express their dreams out loud in this space? And do we hold enough space for differences of opinion? hold enough space for each other. Have we gotten so comfortable with the way that our community feels and looks that we are comfortable enough with the status quo for ourselves because we can express ourselves comfortably in this space? Beloved community means creating space where everyone can feel free to express themselves uniquely and authentically. And one more time, I want to maintain that I'm not talking about creating space to tolerate intolerance. I'm not talking about making space for people with hate in their hearts to come in and express that. I'm talking about a space where our community is able to come in and be itself. I leave you with this thought, because this may be coming up for some of you. A lot of people, when I talk about things like this, you think about that I'm trying to force you to think about how to make our church more diverse. A lot of you like to talk about making the congregation more diverse. And there was a tweet actually that I read this week that talked about how integration or diversity often means bringing people with marginalized or oppressed identities into spaces of white supremacy and asking them to adapt to the space. Instead, what I'm trying to suggest or ask us to think about is how we adapt our space. And I shouldn't even say we, because that's creating an other right there. How this congregation can create a space that does not force people with marginal identities to adapt to it, but rather this congregation becomes a space that invites the authentic participation of everyone who comes in here. How can we do that together? How can we continue to dream? How can we continue to color outside the lines of what a traditional church community looks like, feels like? It might sound like I am asking us to take a sledgehammer to everything that you hold sacred, but I'm not talking about destruction. In fact, I'm rather talking about preservation of the values of love and justice and inclusion that many of us who come here say that we care so much about. And when we do so, will we be able to say that our congregation is all of us and all of us are it? Our congregation is where everyone likes to be, and it looks just like our dreams. You ready to turn the world around?
We gather in community because we know deep in our bones that we need each other to survive. We practice our interdependence here in many ways, by sharing our hearts with one another, by offering comfort and presence to one another, and by learning and growing together. And now we call ourselves to practice our interdependence by giving what we can to support the financial needs of this community. Because we are a community that practices its interdependence with the larger community, we share half of the offering with our community partners. This month, we share our offering with Milagro House, a nonprofit that supports women and children by working to break down the barriers and systems that lead to generational poverty. And they too are one of our neighbors. You can make all this possible by texting the amount of your donation to the number on your screen or by visiting our website. Thank you for your support.
living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Ah, so is life. Ah, so is life. Ah, so is life. Ah, so is life. Do you know who I am? Do you know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Ah, so is life. Ah, so is life. Ah, so is life. So is life. Water make the river, river wash the mountain. Fire make the sunlight, turn the world around. Heart is of the river, body is the mountain. Spirit is the sunlight, turn the world around. We are of the spirit, truly of the spirit. Only can the spirit turn the world around. Ah, so is life. So is life. Ah, so is life. So is life. Ah, so is life. So is life. Ah, so is life. So is life.
Hear these words adapted from a Franciscan benediction. May you be blessed with discomfort at easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships so that you may live deep within your heart. May you be blessed with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people so that you may work for justice, freedom, and peace. May you be blessed with tears to shed for those who suffer pain, rejection, hunger, and war, so that you may reach out your hand to comfort them and to turn their pain into joy. And may you be blessed with enough foolishness to believe that you can make a difference in the world, so that you can do what others claim cannot be done, to bring justice and kindness to all our children and the poor. Blessed be, go in peace and return in love.